9:16. It's the morning show with Jeff and Will on AM 1700 WRCR, Haverstraw, WRCR.com. Welcome back, everybody. Joining us now, as she does every Monday, except when there's a holiday. Here on the morning show at 9:15, it is Tina Traster of the Rockland County Business Journal online, the rcbizjournal.com. Welcome to the show, Tina.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yourself?
Can't complain. I have three things I wanted to tell the good people of Rockland County about this morning.
All righty.
So the first is back beginning in January 2023, last year, hotel guests staying in the village of Nyack, which really is basically two hotels, were paying an additional 3% room occupancy tax based on a new law that the village had passed. And that 3% tax was added to other taxes, the state tax, and also a 3% county tax that had been in place since 2012. This tax has turned into a bit of manna for some businesses in Nyack whose mission it is partially to attract tourists and people to come to the village and see what the village has to offer, particularly those who are doing some creative things. And the reason for that is that a portion of what's been raised from the hotel tax has been given to the nonprofit called Visit Nyack to act as an administrator to hand out grants, again, to promote tourism. So just recently, we wrote about a handful of businesses receiving grants, and that list includes a thrift shop named Lemonade, which received $4,500. Oh, the total. Okay, so the total was $35,000. So Lemonade received $4,500, and the Edward Hopper House received $5,000. The Nyack International Film Festival, $7,000. Rockland Fashion Week, $6,000. Maureen's Jazz Cellar, Dancing on the Streets, $2,500. And the Black Parakeets Arts Crafts and Cocktails Festival, $2,500. And Joji Food Tours, $5,000. So I wanted to highlight, as we did in the story, something that I found to be very innovative and creative, and that is that Laura Graham, who owns the secondhand clothing store called Lemonade, got together with about 7 other people in the village who do thrift or downcycled or secondhand or sustainable fashion kind of stores, small boutique stores, and they put together basically what's called a thrifting tour. It had a different name, but going forward, it's going to be called the Secondhand Shop Hop. And in fact, the first tour is scheduled for April 27th. Now, this kind of a tour, is interesting on a couple of levels. One, it's a creative way for businesses in a village or town or hamlet to collaborate and find common ground, and to take what they do and to elevate it into something that's fun. Hats off to them for coming up with this concept. And secondly, and by the way, it includes seven entities. Secondly, what's really probably very, smart here is that thrifting has become a big thing. It's a big thing for Gen X and millennials. Why? Because they're keyed in on the environment, and there's a whole movement around, recycling or upcycling clothing as opposed to what's called fast fashion, which has a big, carbon footprint. Why else do they like it? They see it as a way to save money. It's sustainable. It's a thing. And there's some really interesting data that we've included in a report called Thread Up about how the market for secondhand goods in the United States is expected to more than double to $82 billion by 2026. So thrifting, is a thing, and these folks gathered around and said, yeah, we're going to create this tour, and that's going to, bring tourism to the village. And what they did is they created a map, and when people start at one store, and then they like punch holes so that they get, all their stops recorded, and then they wind up at the end with proof of having visited each of these stores, and then there's a raffle prize. So it becomes an event. And again, like I said, this is taking a concept that was in Nyack and elevating it. Some of the other, recipients of this grant also, have fun and interesting concepts. And this is all just part of a collective effort to keep promoting Nyack, which really is, the gateway to the county, and is an important catalyst in tourism overall. Now, we do know that in December, the town of Clarkstown voted unanimously to move ahead with steps needed to also impose a hotel-motel tax. And that would be a far more significant collection of money because of the number of hotels that are in Clarkstown. We did that story a while back. I don't have off the top of my mind. I don't remember how many hotels, but it was more than a dozen. It was several, and it's all the kind of the big chain hotels. So the Clarkstown is calling for a 4% occupancy tax on hotels and motels. However, it has not in its legislation specified whether the tax would be used to support tourism, or whether the town is just going to, absorb it to plug, like unfilled budget gaps. So that remains to be seen. But this is interesting, and also the village administrator of Nyack had mentioned that there will be another tranche of grants in Nyack before the end of the year. So when we had reported this originally, I think that the former mayor had mentioned that there could be an anticipated revenue up to at least six figures. So it's an interesting thing, and take a look at that story when you can, because it's just a really interesting concept, and it should spark some interesting ideas for other businesses around the county that want to, elevate their status, their ability to attract tourism. On another subject, unless any thoughts, any questions?
Nope. What's on the agenda for story number 2?
So number 2 is this was this is very preliminary, but an architect on behalf of the owner. Murray's Deli and Gas Station in Nyack. It's kind of iconic. It's been on the street on South Broadway for decades.
Yeah, sure. I know the place. Absolutely.
Okay, everybody's driven by there, and it's kind of a curiosity that in that small village, there's still a gas station, I guess, for better or for worse. So now Tim Murray, who's been there for many decades, is at 58 years old, wants to retire. Lucky him. And he is trying to redevelop this site into an 18-unit mixed-use building. And in Nyack, the way they do things is instead of it starting at a TAC like it does in Clarkstown or a zoning board or a planning board, the first stop in Nyack is the Architectural Review Board, where this project came to light last week. And as I say in the story, sometimes an evening at a Nyack Village meeting is just as riveting as a night on Netflix, because in this particular case there was a lot of drama back and forth over this proposal.
Why is there such drama?
That's where I was headed next. So it's a kind of like a boxy modern structure, and it's sandwiched in between a row of Victorians to the right and an old funeral home, old Victorian funeral home to the left. But the real issue was, and we have a rendering on the site so you can see what I'm talking about. The building is pushed back 38 feet, and in front of the building, at the bottom of the building, are 4 retail stores and a parking lot. for 6 cars. And for the gatekeepers of Nyack, who try their best to try to keep that Victorian charm about, they seem to be quite horrified at the idea of this kind of on-site parking. And one board member said, it looks like a strip mall. The architect got very irritated. Lots of sparks flew at this meeting. And his argument basically was time marches on, modern structures integrate in great cities like New York City and others with Victorian buildings. So he was trying to sell the architecture, but I don't know if he will ultimately prevail over his pitch on whether to put this parking on site, because he was arguing that in Nyack, the board members were arguing in Nyack that the buildings are more or less flush up against the curb, up against the sidewalk. So it went back and forth, and at one point there seemed to be some specifically, we want 50% fewer spaces, and he was like, well, I don't know what 50% is, and in the end of the day, he was basically told, reduce the parking and come back. The proposal includes, like I said, 18 units. 2 of them will be affordable. Nyack, as you know, as anybody who's working knows, there's a lot of new buildings, new modern buildings popping up. And what this is called in wonky circles is urban infill, meaning when you've got a site that's a gas station, which in and of itself, is potentially there's going to be an environmental hard look there because of what may be underground. But when these things dry up and no longer become useful, housing becomes the first obvious thing to put in many spaces because of the need. I mean, everybody agrees that millennial housing is needed. So I just found this to be, apart from the sparks that flew, and we tried to kind of convey some of the back and forth that went in the story, I think just on its own, this is an interesting proposal, for where we have, like I had said, gotten accustomed to an old gas station for many, many years.
And it definitely will be to see how that does develop over the next months, years, however long it takes to complete. We'll see how that develops. Thank you so much, Tina, for joining us as always. We will talk to you again next Monday at 9:15 for your report. And if anybody wants to check out the website, go to rc.com. You can sign up for email newsletters and all sorts of things. Thanks, Tina. We'll talk to you again on Monday.
Have a great week.